it's time to talk the Washington Huskies. And I could think of no one better. I've admired this guy's work from afar, and I'm excited that he's on. Lars Hanson from Locked On Huskies. Lars, thanks so much for coming on to Michigan Live.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, John. And I could think of about 4 or 5 other people that I would tab in for myself, but I appreciate the praise. And obviously, I will say I'll answer your question. I think there's a quarterback in Nevada, in the state of Nevada, that might interest you guys in about 5 or 6 months here. So
the UNLV quarterback.
Just a hunch. He might be available, And I think if you have $1 million, you got 900,000 still to play with after that. So
there you go. We'll let Portnoy know. We'll let him know.
I will say I did actually when I came out to Ann Arbor before we get going. Beautiful campus, beautiful stadium, beautiful setup. Parking I could do without, but I did get to meet Prez right outside the stadium when he was doing the barstool kind of hangout. His wife or fiance at the time had to, and he was great about it. He was more approachable than I thought he would be. So Prez is a good guy. Shout out to Dave.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly what Michigan needs. Michigan needs people like Dave Portnoy, but like 6 more of them to step up. And like there are Michigan alumni with a lot of freaking money. Okay. It's not just Dave Portnoy, but Dave Portnoy stepped up. And I'm hoping that's the cavalry call for all of them to start stepping up. Yeah, bring their 1 to 3 million in, and let's go after a really legit quarterback in the portal. I think that's and a legit wide receiver target as well, because even if Andrew Marsh plays right away, you still are going to need, let's be really honest, the wide receiver talent we have right now isn't cutting the mustard. You can't always rely on run. You can't always rely on defense. A lot of those players are about to leave. So, definitely would like to see more of that. Lars, it's a very interesting situation. It's not very often that a ranked team is the dog. In this situation, they are. Washington is favored by 2.5. The game is Saturday, the 5th, at 7:30 Eastern on NBC. So I want to ask you, kind of starting off, is what do you think the factors are behind kind of Washington being favored in this game right now? Aside from obviously it's at your stadium, Michigan's finally traveling.
Yeah, I mean, you get 3 points for being at home, so that maybe is it. But to me, I look at these two teams, and I was kind of as surprised as you were when you opened that question when I looked at FanDuel on Sunday, and it was a 2.5 point favorite, and I'm thinking to myself, they're about to get some bad news on Monday, which they did, which Javon Parker, their junior D tackle from Detroit, Michigan, Fordham High School, is out for the season with a torn Achilles. His brother Armon was already out for the season with another injury. And so to me, you lose a significant starter in the middle of your defensive line who had graded out as, I think, 85 against the run according to PFF, which is the best run defender you'd have had. He's now gone. And the guys that you have behind him, you have a redshirt freshman. I mean, for me, to answer your question directly, I don't know what it is. I mean, unless it's strictly Husky Stadium, to me, this is a pick 'em game, which is still surprising because Michigan's undefeated, a top 10 team. Yeah, you don't have a quarterback or any wide receivers, but you do have a pretty good run game and a pretty darn good defense. A pretty darn good run defense, especially. And, when I look at Washington, I think, yeah, you have Jonah Coleman, who ran for a season-high 143 against Rutgers, couldn't find the end zone. So, to me, this is an easy betting game. If I'm a Michigan fan, if I'm even a Washington fan, I'm probably saying, you know what? Give me Michigan, just for the sake of the money. If you throw $10, $100 on it, this is a game. First of all, the safest bet here is the under. And I said it against Washington Rutgers, and I will say it again. I will die on this vine after the Apple Cup because I thought Washington would actually, get above 30 points in the Apple Cup, and they couldn't get above 20. So this is an offense that, until proven otherwise, take the under every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is the play of Will Rogers. I think Will Rogers has actually played really well for you guys. He's actually exceeded my expectations, considering last year, at Mississippi State, he was in like the high 50s, low 60s in completion percentage. Right now he's at I was actually just looking at it. Yeah, he's at 74% with almost 150 attempts, 10 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. So he's playing very, very good football, ball security. I think your offense is what is probably giving these bettors some pause for Michigan, because Michigan's offense, as we saw against Minnesota, started to really fizzle out, right? So it's an interesting matchup. I think, another thing too is you have a few weapons on offense, right? Like you've already hit on Jonah Coleman, who's actually having a really good year, 7.2 average. You have two wide receivers who are, above 400 right now. One of them already has 7 touchdowns on the season, which is a hell of a year. And his name is Denzel Boston. No relation to David Boston, I think. But and then our old friend, Giles Jackson. Giles, well, we miss him right now, don't we, John? Giles Jackson, 34 receptions, 401 yards. He's playing pretty well. What's your thoughts on your weapons for the offense, and especially can you hit on Giles Jackson, because I know some of the fan base remember him.
Yeah, former Michigan man himself. Giles has been a trooper, because he was a guy that, I don't know if you guys knew, last season he had to redshirt because he had, I think, a broken thumb or some sort of injury. But basically, he took one for the team, because you had Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk last season who were going to get the targets. There was no room for Giles. And Ryan Grubb basically said, like, hey, if you redshirt this season, you can still play in the somehow. I still don't know how this makes sense. You can play in the Pac-12 championship and the bowl games, and they don't count against your eligibility for next season. You just have to play in 4 regular season games and you're good. So that's how he's back this season. And Giles was a guy to me where I thought he would have killed it last season. Jed's offense, he does great because he really can line up anywhere across the field. And I'm sure you guys saw he broke Larry Fitzgerald's record for most consecutive targets to catches. He had old record was 18 for 18. Apparently he finished 24 for 24 going into the Northwestern game, missed a target on the first one, so that streak ended. But he's still been killing it. The problem that I have, and you'll never get me to be a Washington homer because I went to Washington State, I do not understand Jed Fish's play calling philosophy sometimes. And it's specifically in the red zone, where Giles had, I think, 3 or 4 targets in the red zone, 2 of which were the same play, a short out, basically like a 2-yard up and out to the far side of the field, which isn't his strength, especially when you mentioned Will Rogers. Will's a great quarterback. I love Will. But his arm strength is not a strength. He doesn't have the Michael Penix, I can get it to you in a half a second on the far hash and thread a needle. Will is more of the, I can get you the ball in a specific place, 25, 30 yards down the field, which is where Denzel comes into play. And Denzel is a guy similar to Giles last season, where if you take out Rome, one of those 3 receivers, he's having 6, 7 touchdowns, 5, 6, 700 yards. He was going to be a guy. Jamarcus Shepard loved him last season. And so coming into this season, I thought he was going to lead the team in receptions based on average category, and he's done that. The other side of that equation is just the play calling. I haven't seen, you didn't, the one guy you didn't mention, and rightfully so, but who I would have thought at this point in the season you would have, is Jeremiah Hunter, the receiver from Cal, who came to Washington after having no quarterback play at Cal the past 3 years. None. When Jake Plummer was his best quarterback at Cal. Put that into context. You get Will Rogers, and his best game was this past weekend, 5 for 50 against Rutgers. And that was intentionally not targeting Giles and Denzel. So whatever reason Jed can't figure out how to get these guys the ball, that's got to change this weekend, because, again, you have a defense who's good against the run, back third against the pass. If there's a weekend to do it, it's this weekend. Now, shout out Will Johnson. He's going to take away one of those guys, but
yeah, he's going to take away a decent chunk of the field. Yeah, I this is very fascinating for a lot of reasons. One, this is the first regular season rematch of a previous season national championship game since Bama LSU 2012. So this doesn't happen very often, number one. Very exciting for that reason. Both teams have new coaches. Both teams have a lot of new coaching staff, personnel. The entire offense basically is different. And on both sides, really. So it's almost like you're playing. Even though it is technically a rematch, it's very much a new match in a lot of ways because of how different the teams are this year. But with Jedd Fisch, that also fascinates me. So as you remember, Jedd Fisch was a member of Michigan's offensive staff in 15 and 16. And I believe that he performs best in a unit of offensive coordinating and play calling versus being the play caller, because I actually believe he did very well in 15 and 16. And the reason is because when he left in 2017, and we had Tim Drevno and Pep Hamilton. You can watch an Amazon documentary about that called All or Nothing. And spoiler alert, it was nothing, because the offense was like, what is happening here? And so the difference in schematically and the difference in approach, Jedd Fisch is good in a unit, but it sounds like solo, when when it's his vision, it leaves something to be desired.
It does. And I said this on our Lockdown Husky show. I talked to Yogi Roth and a few others. I talked to PJ Fleck at Big Ten Media. I got to stop saying Pac-12. Big Ten Media Day this past July. And they all said to a man, he's like the smartest guy in the room. He's the guy that, has all the answers. And I'm like, that's never a good sign, because that means there's nobody that's going to check him. And it's kind of the question that I have coming into this game, and what I posed after the Rutgers game, which was, who can check Jedd in that building? I don't think anybody can. I know Brennan and him go back a long way. Brennan Carroll, the offensive coordinator, go back a long ways. Jimmy Doherty, the same sort of situation. But you look at, and I doubt you guys have seen it, but maybe I've read about it, the Apple Cup play where, ironically, he admitted after the game to me he wanted the original play before the timeout was to go to Giles Jackson on the 3-yard line or the 2-yard line. Instead, they ended up running speed option into the boundary to the short side of the field. And
I hate speed option. It's like my least favorite plays is in speed option.
Of all the plays in the playbook, that's the one they went to, and he's like, this is our gotta have it play. And when he said it's our gotta have it play, I'm like, hey, you were never gonna have that play then. Like, you were just flat out never gonna have it. And so, to your point, this is where I get kind of terrified in this game, is the Wink Martindale versus Jedd Fisch, situation.
Yeah.
Where, like, to me, and again, I don't hate Jedd. I'm not a Barry Jedd kind of guy. I was a big fan of Kalen. I knew he was going to kill it at Bama, and so I'm willing to give coaches the benefit of the doubt.
Sure, but I thought he was your best chance. I thought he was the best option for you guys. So I was in full support when DeBoer decided to go off to the Alabama Crimson Tide.
He was, because I think Indiana already made their coaching hire at that point. I could be wrong in that, but I'm pretty sure Stegnetti was already in Bloomington at that point.
I think you're right.
And so, to your point, when you make the hire, you didn't really have a lot of options to go from. And so Jedd was absolutely the right hire, and he's done a great job on the recruiting trail. And, the top 20, they're getting 4-star guys left and right. If you want to make this a game, whoever winner gets Andrew Marsh, I'd be down for that. But, aside from that, I know Kevin Cummings would be down for that.
We're already we got him.
I was gonna say. But that's what terrifies me, because Jedd's proven that he doesn't really have a true identity of an offense. I asked him what the identity of the offense is, and he threw out, we're this and big plays, we're this and wrong, we're this and this, that, we're this. And I'm like, I can look up numbers too, my guy. I'm asking you, what is your identity? And you're not giving me anything. That's the problem that I think. Whereas if you ask Wink Martindale, what's the identity of your Michigan defense? Stop the run, solid outside play, could get better, but there's at least an identity that you could quickly go towards. And even if you're Michigan's offense, we don't have a great quarterback, but we got 2 really good running backs, really good offensive line. There's something you can point to where it's something to run instead of the past. And Jedd he's got about 20 different cooks in the fire right now, trying to bring along Damon Williams as a true freshman while getting Will Rogers his playing time. And everything is working and everything is not working at the same time.
In case you're just joining us, we've got Lars Hanson from Locked On Huskies helping us preview the upcoming national championship rematch, Michigan at Washington, with Washington favored by 2.5. Loki here is doing a nice lead-in to start talking the opposite which would be your defense against Michigan's offense. Detective Loki with the 2. He's also standing with Alex Orgy, saying Orgy with the football is like Da Vinci with a brush. So
that's art.
Wow. Look, we earlier in the show we said let's cool it on the Jalen Milroe comparisons, because I think Orgy seems a bit more of a game manager type, and at least isn't like getting 3 picks a game, and there's a manageability of the game and a kind of even keeled that way. But let me ask you this: when you look at it from the other side of the coin, and you look at Michigan's kind of up and down offense and some of the struggles, who do you think on Washington's defense is going to really play a role in really, if Washington were to win or do very well, who would need to really step up?
So I'll give you one player at 3 levels. The defensive line, Sebastian Valdez. As I mentioned, Javon Parker's out, so he's the Montana State transfer coming in. He's been a disruptor. He's been a big guy. They call him Seabass. I don't understand the nickname just because your name is Sebastian doesn't mean that actually connects. But he's been a significant disruptor, whether it's the run or the pass game. To me, I think he's a guy that you're gonna see. No pun intended. You're going to see him somehow because you can't miss him on the field. And he hasn't really been slowed down consistently in a game. Rutgers did a decent job a little bit. Northwestern did a decent job a little bit. Wazoo, same sort of thing. But he's a guy who's going to have to find a way to disrupt the offense one way, shape, or form up the middle of that line. Secondly is going to be Alfonso Chuputala. And I say that with respect to Carson Bruner, because I'm sure Michigan fans will say, how are you not picking Carson Bruner if you're picking a linebacker? Whatever Steve Belichick, and I've still been working on it, whatever Steve Belichick did to Alfonso Chuputala, I think I would love to know what that was, because he has revolutionized him from what he was last season. It's a guy who met his first pick 6, drops the ball at the 1.5-yard line, had an Achilles injury as well in his career, and he's really been, I think, the MVP of this defense. If you were to a man ask a player, hey, who's been the most impactful guy, because he's the green dot, believe it or not, he's the green dot. So he's the guy setting up the Washington defense with Carson Bruner. And on the back end, this name might surprise you a little bit. You guys might recognize this name, Cam Broussard, the Sacramento State transfer at safety. He's another guy who he was about 3 yards, and we make our prediction on Fridays on Locked On Huskies about bold predictions. And I said he was going to have his first interception or his first turnover. He was about 3 yards combined between having 2 picks in that game. So I think Cam's a guy who's been really coming along. He's good in the run. Obviously, I'm sure you guys have seen when you watch the tape, Steve loves to walk those safeties down, so he's going to be like a third linebacker in a sense. So those would be 3 guys I would pick.
Yeah, I remember.
Real quick, I just want to point this out because you kind of sped past it a little bit. That's the Steve Belichick, who's the defensive coordinator. Yes, Bill Belichick's son, famously on the staff of the Patriots. So just in case you're like, wait a minute. Yes, it's that one. Sorry, go ahead, TJ.
Well, I was going to say Cam Broussard, I think the reason why he's highlighting him is because he was somebody Michigan was interested in the portal. Very good, dynamic, physical player. So when I was looking at Washington's defense, one of the things that stuck out to me is you guys are actually the second best passing defense in the Big Ten. Now, obviously, that's not good for us, considering our limitations in the passing game. So do you think that's an area that Washington can exploit against Michigan? Do you think they can shut down, make us even more one-dimensional than we already are, and just focus us on the run? And then if they do that, do you have confidence in Washington's defense to shut us down? Because when I look at your run defense, you guys are, I would say, ranked around 10th in the Big Ten. So what's your take on that?
I mean, if this becomes a passing game, then yeah, I absolutely understand why Washington favored by 2.5. I mean, if the debate's Will Rogers versus Alex Orgy, I think you take that one in a heartbeat if you're Washington. And that's no offense to Alex, but I think
you're right.
100%. I just got to call a spade a spade.
I think we agree with you there. Yeah.
But what, as you mentioned, fears me is Donovan Edwards and the other running back you guys have. Names escape me.
Edwards?
Khalil Mullings.
Yes. Yeah. And to me, you have a good run defense in Washington, but without Javon Parker, Kamori House has been a redshirt freshman who I'll give him credit has come along and come a long ways. I just don't know. I mean, we saw it in the national championship. Like if this is going to be a rematch, it's going to be one on the ground. And I don't know if I'm Washington, if I can consistently stop them on the ground for 4 quarters. The beautiful part about that is it limits possession. You can draw out those drives. Washington is getting off the field sometimes. And you'll have some of those drives where, wow, it's a 5-minute drive when really probably 3 or 2-minute drive. And so that could work both in Washington's favor and against. I just don't. If it becomes one-dimensional, I mean, honestly, I think I agree with the principle of like, hey, it'd be great if Washington could force Michigan to throw the ball, but I just don't envision a world where that becomes a thing. I mean, if anything, Michigan might try and throw it a little bit more to balance out have a 50-50 balance. But, as I talked to Donovan Edwards at Big Ten Media, then he's like, he was the one that ended up actually getting the first 2 touchdowns in the national championship. And he really seemed like a kind of guy where it's like, oh, no, the offense really revolves around your guys' run game. And whatever the quarterback happens to do, so be it. And to me, that worried me more than potentially forcing Alex Orji into a passing game. I just – that's what Rutgers was supposed to become in a sense with Kyle Monangai and Samuel Brown. And yet even – AA still managed to find a way to carve up a few first downs, get the drives going, and then the run game took it over. And so if you're Michigan, and if you're asking for a plan of attack, I would just say rinse and repeat what Rutgers' game plan was because it worked. And until Washington can actually prove on offense that it can hang, all you have to do as a defense. Basically, Steve Belichick's job is to keep everybody under 21 points. The problem is Jed can't even get to 20. So if Wink Martindale can keep him under 20, that's why the perfect over-under for this game is 40.5. I would still take the under.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair analysis there. And I think you're right. I think the blueprint that Rutgers had is the blueprint Michigan needs to take. I mean, Kalakamanis, the quarterback for Rutgers, only had 115 yards. Now we're still hoping Orji can get past the century mark on yards one day. But in terms of running the ball, 132 yards by Monangai, and then Brown had 44. That's your Edwards Mullins duo there. So, and they didn't have a receiver get more than 40 yards in that game. So that's a recipe for Michigan. So we'll see. I mean, I think you're right though, Lars. I think you have the blueprint of what Michigan needs to do. Let me ask you this: how was Washington's adjustments at the second half? Did they win the battle or lose the battle? I mean, obviously they lost the game, but do you think they made the right adjustments in the second half?
Defensively, yes. The struggles still persist with the red zone scoring. That, if you want to see where this game lives and dies, it's the red zone scoring. Washington is 117th in the country in red zone efficiency. And of those, I think they have 9 touchdowns and 4 field goals. And I will not roast Grady Gross because of what he did last season. But again, if Grady kicks 2 of those 3 field goals 3 yards to the right, they win that game against Rutgers. I don't necessarily think it's going to be another field goal game against Michigan, but the defense certainly made Steve made the adjustments. I'll give him credit for that. The one area where I haven't seen the adjustments come into play is the red zone. And so that really is, if we're looking for a place to find where Washington can improve from last week or the last couple weeks to this week, I mean, first of all, get into the red zone. That's the first struggle against the Wink Martindale defense. And then once you're there, don't settle for field goals. Jed's an interesting cat. Jed is really an interesting cat because he went for 4th down, I think, from the Rutgers 37 on the first drive of the game. Will overshoots Denzel by about 3.5 country miles. Give up that one. Okay. You kick the field goal from the 22 on the next drive to get yourself some points. And then I think they had a touchdown on the following drive after that. Then they didn't score again. My thing was, if Grady's going to kick the 22, why not take those points off the board? Take those 3 off the board, give yourself 4 more, and run it with Jonah. Didn't do it. And there's just so many head-scratching, perplexing decisions that Jed has had this season, which, again, I look at Vegas and I'm like, whatever you guys do, however much you bet on this game, feel comfortable with your bet, folks. That's all I will say. Like, if you can't afford to lose X, don't bet X. That's all I will say, unless you're going to pick the under, because that's the safest bet in this game.
Yeah, and we are getting into keys to the game now, and so you're thinking, when we're thinking of keys to the game, one thing I would like to point out, it may be a slightly hot take, that I actually believe that in one aspect, your offense is slightly more 2 or 3 dimensional than in the Natty. And the reason is because your running back, Jonah Coleman, right, 521 yards, 72 carries, is healthy. So in the national championship game, where you did have 3 of maybe some of the best wide receivers that played and one of the best quarterbacks that played, the run game was almost non-existent because your running back was running at, let's be real, like 50%, if that. So it allowed Jesse Minner to scheme for the pass. It allowed him to drop back. It allowed him to make Michael Penix have to worry. And he was off his game, and he's almost never off his game, right? And would that have happened to the same degree if the run game was there? Maybe not. And so in this game, yes, your offense looks wildly different, but at least in one aspect, you're going to have more for the defense and for Wink to think about. So would you say that if the offense is balanced in that way between the run and the pass, could that be a key to Washington winning?
Absolutely. What's the one area of the game that I was expecting Washington to go towards more, which is the check down, the Jonah Coleman out of the backfield, 2 running back sets. Cam Davis goes one way, the backup running back, Jonah Coleman goes the other way. Both significant pass catchers. They could easily catch the ball, and I would throw Adam Muhammad, a true freshman running back, similar as kind of what Tybo was last season, although much different people, much different situation, much all that. But you have at least a freshman like will play in this game as well. I just had to clarify that because anytime you bring up Tybo, got to clarify. With that being said, yeah, there's the interesting thing about, I'm glad you made that comparison, was Ryan Grubb did not really make any changes in the second half in that national championship. There wasn't anything that we saw from week 11 to then, which he had been doing. And so I'm curious if Jed can make those adjustments because all the weapons are there. Giles is the guy who's 0 to 15 yards, kind of been that yards after catch guy. Denzel is their shot play guy. Jeremiah is their I don't know what guy. And then you have Kaleki Latu and Decker to grab, 2 tight ends who have found, Decker's been probably the better of the two, if I'm being honest, as a true freshman. But I think he's only had 3 or 4 catches, 2 of which have gone for touchdowns. So, he's a touchdown machine in that respect. But to me, if Jed can open up more of the playbook, and this is something we talked on Locked On Huskies about, which was, I don't know why you haven't been using the full playbook if that's the case, but it really seems like this offense has been with one hand tied behind his back. And it's not because of Will, and it's not because of Jonah. I think it's truly because of Jed. And I don't know why that's the case. But if we see more of the playbook, I think there's actually a chance where Washington could do some damage against Michigan. And that's saying something, knowing how good Wink Martindale's defense can be.
Okay. So I'll give my keys to the game here. So my keys to the game that I think for Michigan is I think Michigan has to get pressure on the quarterback, sustained pressure, not just one guy making all the plays. I think we need to make Will Howard uncomfortable. I think we need to try to get him to not to create turnovers. He has not thrown a pick this year. I'd like this game to be the game that changes that. So I'd like to see continued pressure, and hopefully he makes a mistake to either Jair Hill or one of our safeties, Will Johnson. We all know what he can do. The other one is we have to run the ball. I agree with Lars here. I think running the ball is how we're going to establish our win here. And when I mean run the ball, of course, obviously, but I mean we have to make it so Washington cannot stop us running the ball. Where, for example, Minnesota started loading the box, and it started getting very hard to get a first down. It started getting very hard to score points. We have to make it so we stay ahead of the chains and we continue to run the ball down their throat. I have confidence we can do that. And then the turnover battle, I think, is how we win the game. I think this is going to be a close game. We'll give our score predictions after the keys of the game, but I think if we can win the turnover battle, similar to USC, then we will come away with a good result.
I'll give some for each team. Washington, obviously, it's at Husky Stadium. It's at your house. So that's a huge factor, right? That's number one. Number two, like you said, if Jed Fish can make the adjustments needed, But more than anything else, if they can rely on a balanced attack, because Washington's defense, let's be real, they don't need to be world beaters to slow down the Michigan passing game. The Michigan run game, that's another story. And does the trench play hold up? We're about to get there. Because Michigan's keys, I think it's trench play. I think it's winning up front. What we've seen is that now USC did hold up to a decent extent, but what we've seen from the Pac-12 teams now joining the Big Ten is a trench issue, right? And we kind of saw that coming in, that there would be a little bit of a physicality thing going on. We're seeing that a little bit, and I think that for Michigan to win, it has to be there, right? The run game needs to be there. I would like to see Donovan Edwards, Kalel Mullings in the backfield, Alex Orji, maybe there's a pistol concept, shotgun, whatever. Have one of them go out pre-snap motion, or have one of them go in as a blocker, or out in the slot maybe, or out for a 3-yarder on the right. And you keep the defense guessing that way, because Orji will have Colston Loveland. He will have Marlon Klein. He will have some receiving weapons. If Samaj Morgan's back, Samaj was getting separation at times against USC. So I think that if the run is creative and forces Washington's defense to factor in, then it does open up the pass a little. Colston Loveland, 6'5", gets that separation, and you have yourself maybe. I think I'd like to see Orji hit 100, maybe even 150. Somebody predicted 155 in the chat. That would be great. I'd love 100 pass yards. And let's get more in the run game, because that will really open things up. And then, of course, Will Johnson being back changes the whole thing, right? Will Johnson, half the field, you're not throwing to. Like, Jed Fish is not going to throw the ball, because I know he's smart. I know play calling, you're kind of questioning a little bit, which I get, and you laid out a good case, but I think he's smart enough to know not to throw to Will Johnson. And so he's going to need to really, he changes the whole thing for the defense. Josiah Stewart, if he's back, provides that pressure, and it's just I think it's just kind of a mismatch in physicality that wins the game for Michigan, for keys there. And with all that said, we're on to predictions. So we always start with our guest on predictions. And so, Lars, what do you think is going to happen at your house, or at Washington's house? Because I know you said you are Washington State. But what do you think is going to happen in this one, Lars?
So, as always, my predictions are always on the money. Never a question about that. But I will say I'm going to stick with my consistent under, and I'd probably go 2014, 2017 Michigan. I just don't think this game gets above 40.
24-17?
No, 2014. 20 Michigan, 14
20 to
Washington.
14.
Yeah,
Okay.
or 20 to 17. I haven't decided if Washington gets within 3 or not, but I don't think this game gets this offense. It just doesn't seem like there's going to be a ton of scoring in this game, where if Michigan actually does try to commit to the pass, they're going to have longer drives. Washington might try and draw it out. I would love to see this game get into the 30s. I don't see a route where this game gets in the 30s, especially if you have two really good running backs and this turns into a running back battle. Those games never end in 28, 35, 42. It's always in the 20s. And so I can see maybe the over hits if both running backs get going, but I will give them edge to Michigan, go 2014.
Okay. DJ?
All right, so you guys heard it here. Lars is predicting a Michigan victory. Appreciate that, Lars. I know the fan base loves to hear it, especially because you cover the team. So if anyone knows, you know. So we appreciate that. My prediction is Michigan 24, Washington 17.
I like it.
Not bad. I'm going to go Michigan 21, Washington 10. So that's just kind of the vibe right now. Moose is a little higher scoring than me. Moose is saying it's going to be 58. So Moose, you better bet that over then if you're thinking it's going to be 58 points for sure. We've got one score, national championship score. We've got Yes, thank you everybody for giving your predictions. And Scumbag Steve, low scoring. This is true Big Ten right here. 17-14 Michigan from Scumbag Steve. So we do appreciate everybody giving the predictions here. Lars, you didn't have to come on. You did. You took some time out of your night to stop by Michigan Wolverines Live. I want to thank you. I want to give you the opportunity for a final thought, and then where can people find you on the internet?
Absolutely. Well, hey, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on, and appreciate you doing everything behind the scenes. Like I said last night, it just makes my life a little bit easier. And as you know, I can kind of be a little hard to reach. So appreciate you guys having me on. Great show. You can find any of my work. Basically, just type in Athlon Sports Lars Hanson. Seems to be the easiest way where you can do that. It's Inside the Huskies for the Washington site, all Seahawks. I also cover the Seahawks for Athlon. So to kind of check out both those things. And then Lockdown Huskies, pretty much anywhere YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, as Roman always says, Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere you find your podcast, just type in Lockdown Huskies and it should be the first one that pops up there. And that's where all of our podcasts go. And yeah, I will say this game is probably 5 years in the making, because you guys were supposed to come out for the home and home that you never ended up coming out for. And dodge that bullet in the COVID year. Shout out to you guys for that. But no, it kind of worked out well where it's a national championship rematch that isn't. And I'm a little disappointed it's not Harbaugh versus Fish, but
yeah, that would be a great story.
Oh, you're disappointed, huh? We're disappointed. We would have loved that. But yeah, it should be a good game. Should be fun. It's I